Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for a webinar for the Master of Science in Innovation and Venture Development. If this is your first time joining us for one of these webinars, MSIVD is a brand new master's program that's starting this fall 2020 at Arizona State University through a partnership between the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, the W.P. Carey School of Business, and the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts. My name is Jackie Collins, and I'm the graduate coordinator for the MSIVD program. I work with MSIVD students throughout the admissions process, as well as in an academic advising capacity. So if you are a current student and you have any advising questions, I am going to be your point of contact. If you are a prospective student or an applicant and you have any questions about the application process, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be happy to help you with your questions. Today, we are joined by Cheryl Heller, the program director for MSIVD, which is a partnership position through the three schools that the program is held within. And she is also a professor of practice at Arizona State University. She's going to be in conversation today with Dr. Steve Cho. Steve Cho is a lecturer in the Technological Entrepreneurship and Management program in the Polytechnic School, which is part of the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering here at ASU. He applies technology to new business ventures, and his expertise includes entrepreneurship, strategic marketing, and leadership. And we're also very happy and thankful to have him as one of our faculty for the first year of the MSIVD program this fall. So he is going to be talking today about scaling entrepreneurial leadership. With that introduction being said, I'm going to turn things over to Cheryl and Steve for their conversation.
Thanks, Jackie, and welcome, Steve. We are really excited to have Steve Cho here with us. He is a consummate innovator and entrepreneur, and he's a walking embodiment of transdisciplinarity, which you'll hear more about. And as Jackie said, he's not only one of our faculty, he's one of the founding faculty. So Steve has been involved in helping to imagine what this program ought to be from the very beginning. And Steve, if it's okay, I'd like to start out with a question appropriate for these times. What is, in your mind, leadership at this moment? And what's different about the future, or leadership in the future, than what it's been in the past?
Well, first of all, I still find it a bit of a mind-blowing question. But fundamentally, conceptually, leadership stays the same. One of the biggest misconceptions people make about leadership is that it's a person. It's not a person. Leadership is an activity of getting people together to accomplish a specific task. The reason why it changes so much, now, of course, we have the contextual events, such as environmental, which we're seeing right now with COVID, or social, which we're seeing with the protests. However, the big underlying thing of it all is technology. The thing about technology is technology comes in waves. And if you look at the timeline of technology, it starts out first with the age of invention, and then it becomes the age of innovation. A lot of people jump on to the wave of innovation in the beginning, and those who get it make it to the end, and those who don't. The way you can kind of think about it is in 1900, the Wright brothers made the airplane, which is really amazing to me because that thing they got on was basically a glorified kite with a motor on it. And then 20 years later, what happens? They're flying around up there shooting at each other. And so we see what happens with innovation. But what technology does is it makes things complex, more volatile, and also the world moves faster. And that's what we consistently see. In terms of leadership, okay, let's take the two parts to it. There's the objective. Okay, now that problems have become more complex due to technology, that's become much tougher for the leader. In terms of the other part, which is human capital, well, people change with technology. Before, you just went face-to-face and talked to people. Now you've got all kinds of different channels to go talk to people. Not only that, but in terms of your job hygiene, meaning what are the things about your job that makes you want to stay there, that make you feel like that you're taken care of. It's changed because people now have a social conscience, they have an environmental conscience, And also, what really scares people right now is the old contract that if I have a job, I'll have it for life, and that doesn't exist. So people are concerned about, is there a future for me? But one thing I could say about leadership, the state of leadership right now is everybody's unhappy. Doesn't matter what it is, business, politics. And so I think what we're going to see more of is more of a move to entrepreneurship. And one thing I tell students is own your future. Don't let somebody own your future for you. You own your own future. And that's what entrepreneurship gives you. Not only that, by owning all your own future and all, I think we can start creating new avenues into fixing some of the problems we have. And that's that you have socially conscious people starting companies. And so traditionally, the model's been social justice and economic theory. You either flow the money to the top or flow the money to the bottom. And instead, what can happen is we could have economic justice, where we use economics as an engine to solve some of our problems. And also, entrepreneurs are going to be more focused on industrial policy as opposed to an economic theory. And that's building up the resources that we need to take on the future.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so I'm going to teach a scalable leadership class. And one thing I found out when I was researching this class is there's nothing written about it. But here's why you need to learn it. Now, most people think scalable leadership means everybody in your organization learn leadership, but that's distributed leadership. And there are papers about that. But scalable leadership is, how do you grow in your startup? And the hard reality is 50% of you aren't going to make it by year 3. You're going to get whacked. And much fewer than that are going to make it to IPO. And the issue here is, why do they lose their jobs? Why do they get rid of? And it's because their skills don't scale. They don't scale with the company. And so they hit a wall, and that's when they get removed and replaced. Next slide. And so this is the way you scale through your company. In the very beginning, you are a family, close-knit, and then you become a village. The thing about a village is most villages try not to exceed the size of 150 people. And the reason why is it's called Dunbar's number. 150 people can still all know each other. That's about your capacity. And then from there, you grow into a small company, and then you grow into a corporation. And so what this course does is go over what issues you're going to have to deal with in terms of going from the start, from your family, all the way up to a corporation. Next slide. So how does this fit into the overall MSIVD program? And what it comes down to is the goal of this program is to execute, to help you learn and educate yourself on the concepts and the challenges that come along. So who are the people who win? Is it people who see this much of a problem? Next. This much of the problem? Next. This much of the problem? Next. Or is it the person who sees that? And next. The person who sees most of the problem wins. You're going to learn all the tactical skills and strategic skills in your courses in MSIVD. What this course does is give you basically the big picture of how this all flows together. Next slide. People are biased when it comes to a startup. Your startup basically performs on 3 pillars. Those pillars are marketing, next. Your executive strategy, next. And your product. And so The thing is, all of these people are biased towards what they think is the most proper way to build your startup and what you should be centering on. And as it turns out, you have to do everything. The way to look at your startup is all of these things are serial. They all depend on each other like links in a chain. Next. And so what it comes down to is that your probability of you making it is the probability of any one of these steps. And if the probability is 0, guess what? You're not going to make it. In terms of technology products, only 1 in 10 make it. Dr. Cho is 4 for 4. Am I a genius? No. There's plenty of my fellow MIT alum would tell you that I was the village idiot. But the one thing I do know how to do is pick winners. And it's because I understand that all these pieces have to work together. And the big challenge for you as a startup is, okay, we've eliminated the showstoppers, but how do we fix things? You find the answer, you eliminate it, you reduce the impact. And the biggest decision that you make every time is, are you in or are you out? That's what you need to look at. Next slide. So what this course is designed to do is to help you develop a map, help you develop a vision of what's coming. Now, of course, it may not come. But what it comes down to is these kinds of issues, at least you're prepared for how you need to grow and how your skills need to grow with it. Next slide. And so here's the map. Essentially, leadership for your executives, your marketing, and your product are 3 different things. And as you grow and scale through the phases, these are the major challenges that you're going to face. And so we'll take you through this journey.
You recently did some research on what universities produce successful startup, or why some do and others don't. Can you talk a little bit about what you discovered?
This all started with a very simple question. Someone asked, why do some universities produce more startups than others? And one answer right away was, oh, it's because they have really good business schools. Well, the '1 school in entrepreneurship right now is Babson, and they don't produce all that many startups. And so they said, oh no, you need a $1 billion engineering program. That's what you need. The #1 and 2 schools in this country that spend money on research, each spends over $1 billion each, is Johns Hopkins University, which isn't exactly known as a startup incubator, and the University of Michigan, which is somewhere on the middle side towards the front. And Jessica Sarceda, who's an alumni, and I, we actually found a database from a VC of what universities produce. And so we started correlating that to another bunch of different variables. And the thing that we found is that having a great business school or having a great engineering school isn't enough, that one doesn't have dominance over the other. And what we did find through the different attributes is, next. The key to producing a lot of companies are the schools that have strong business programs and can generate content, meaning they're also good engineering schools. Some say it's location, but actually like Santa Clara University, fantastic business program, very weak in engineering, and they're in Silicon Valley. So shouldn't they have money hand over fist to be pumping out startups left and right? And they don't. And it's because they can't produce content. And so what this does is it really points to the validity of this MSIVD program, that the people who win are the ones who are going to be able to integrate more solutions together. And it fits in what I was talking about. The person who knows the most is the person who wins. And so to bring together business and content, which this program does fantastically, is really where the future and the way to go is for entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us, Dr. Cho. To everybody that is here watching with us today, if you have any questions about any of the topics that Dr. Cho has discussed during his presentation, please feel free to leave those questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar. We do expect to have a few minutes towards the end of this presentation for your questions. So if you have any for him, or if you have any for me or Cheryl in the next couple of minutes, please be sure to put them there, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as we can as we get towards the end of the webinar today. In the meantime, I did want to take just a couple of minutes to talk to you about the admission information about the MSIVD program if you are thinking about applying. So the application requirements for this specific program, as with just about any other program, you would need to provide your undergraduate transcripts. ASU does allow you to upload unofficial transcripts through the online application. So if you have access to your unofficial transcripts, you can upload those then, or you can have your official transcript sent directly to ASU's graduate admissions office. If you're an international student, you may need to find a way to meet the English proficiency requirement. If you haven't already taken any of the common English proficiency tests, a couple of good options to look at right now that ASU is accepting are the Duolingo English test, or TOEFL also has an at-home version of their English proficiency test that you can take right now as well. The other things that all MSIVD applicants need to provide are an up-to-date copy of their resume and their letter of intent. The letter of intent is your opportunity to introduce yourself to the MSIVD faculty, to talk about what you are interested in about the MSIVD program, what your own personal passions are, and what you would hope to get out of this program. It should be pretty short, about 3 pages or so, double-spaced. And like I said, you can just use this as your first opportunity to introduce yourself to the program. If your application is selected to move on to the next stage in the application process, we will contact you with some additional questions and to schedule a brief online interview. So the link at the bottom of this screen here is to the MSIVD website, and there is a link there to the application if you have not applied already. We are still accepting applications for fall 2020. The online application is open. So if you did miss our application deadline that was last week on June 30th, not to worry, you do still have the option to apply. We will continue to review applications as they come in on a space available basis up until the fall. And then I also just briefly wanted to touch on the program cost for MSIVD. If you have joined us before, this graphic is probably somewhat familiar to you. This is going to be an estimated breakdown of the program cost depending on your residency classification. So you can see it's a 1-year master's program. You'd be taking 30 credits total over the course of the fall, spring, and summer semesters. And in addition to the ASU tuition and fees, you would be expected to pay a $4,000 program tuition that is specific to MSIVD each semester that you're in the program. So you can get a sense from looking at this here what you can expect for the program cost for MSIVD over the course of the first year if you're interested in applying. So we do have a few minutes now to answer some of your questions. I'm going to take a look and see if we have any questions in yet. And if you have not had a chance to submit your questions, please feel free to do so now.
While we're waiting, Jackie, I have a question for you, Steve. You said a couple of very provocative things. You said you're 4 for 4 and you know how to pick winners, and that the person who knows the most, the people who know the most are those who succeed. Can you put those things together? Can you talk a little bit about your 4 and how that notion of knowing the most applied to their success?
Actually, one thing about my time at MIT, one of the best things I did was learn how to play poker. And the biggest thing you learn in poker is with a hand, are you in or are you out? And I passed on tons of technology approaches for the simple reason that I use the serial approach, where I look at it from all 3 points of view. And because I did something really weird with my career, most of you will have a vertical career, meaning you'll become a specialist in some topic, keep going up. I went horizontal. I mean, I've worked in 7 different industries. I've worked along the entire technology ladder scale up to the C-suite. And by doing stints in marketing and by doing stints in manufacturing and things like that, I could see how the entire picture plays together. And when I see that bottleneck where the probability is 0, then it's like, nope, throw the hand away and deal me something else.
But what will you tell us what the four startups were?
They weren't necessarily startups, 4 technologies. And one technology was spin-on glass, which is used in chips. The other is the microgyroscope. You have 3 of them in your phone. The other was laser sealed packaging, which is actually used in flat panel displays right now. And the 4th was using acoustic energy to create uniform thin films. Now, 2 of those were startups. The thing is, the technology made it, and this is what I mean about all pieces. When you're not the CEO or something, you only have a very small piece. And if all the pieces have to come together, you don't impact that. And so the technology made it, but the companies didn't. And so things end up getting licensed or spun off. And in certain cases, they're still in development. But what I'm proud of is, you know, I did my part.
So when you think about the teams and the founders that are going to come out of the IVD program, what's your greatest hope for what they're able to accomplish?
One of the biggest things that kills startups is you overpromise and you underdeliver. And that happens because of a lack of understanding of what value you're actually providing. The thing I like about this program is that if you're not a technology person, don't worry, nobody's expecting you to be a great engineer. But the point is you're going to get an education. And so that education is going to help you understand what the issues are so you can make better decisions, because that ultimately makes or breaks a startup.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm a good chemist, but I'm not a great chemist. I'm not the best mechanical engineer, but I fairly studied. And so when issues come up, I look at it and then I start asking questions. And so you can do the same things with your marketing people, production, and everything else.
It's there's a relationship between being transdisciplinary and being a generalist, right? Having enough broad curiosity to know how everything works.
Steve, I have
So you're asking me what's the difference or what?
No, well, listen, I would love for you to answer it. It's a tough question, but yeah, I would love to hear what you think.
Actually, I've been slapped with the generalist label, and I kind of bristle at it. I consider myself to be transdisciplinary. And the reason why is generalists tend to know a lot about a lot of things, but their knowledge tends to be siloed. And transdisciplinary people understand how knowledge flows together and trades off. And the thing is, you start to see commonality, and especially in engineering and science.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a question from someone in the Q&A right now. They said that you mentioned knowing everything, but what about who you know as well?
That's part of trying to know as much as possible. And that to a large extent, it depends on people. And that's one thing we go over in this class, and that's that no one person can know all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but the point is I go find the people who do have the answers. That's the fun part about a startup. You don't want somebody who thinks they know the answer, for the simple reason, if the answer is already known, then there's no challenge there. There's no innovation. There's nothing interesting there. What you're trying to do is find people who know how to go out and find the answer.
Yeah, and I think that that ties into what you said earlier as well about how, you know, somebody in this program doesn't necessarily have to be the technology expert. It's about bringing people together that have the knowledge to come together. I have a kind of general question for you, Steve. As someone who has been, you know, with this program pretty much from the beginning of the development, obviously things have changed a great deal since the program was first imagined, you could say. And, you know, one thing that we have talked about in previous webinars is this idea that the program seems more relevant now than ever. I wonder, from your perspective, if you could speak to that idea a little bit.
Well, when I was talking about the original question on leadership, I honestly believe that people are going to move towards entrepreneurship. And first of all, you have this huge wealth of education, whether it's us or somebody else. And people are going to be looking for ways to take care of themselves, and especially when things go rough, because we live in an extremely volatile world. I mean, who knows when the next pandemic's going along? One thing I'm concerned about is, while we've been messing with all this, our planet is kind of in trouble. I'm the kind of person who doesn't trust people. So when this whole global warming thing came out, I actually went through the models and did the math myself. My conclusion is we're screwed, but anyway. Entrepreneurship is what founded this country. And entrepreneurship is, it's become a global race. This summer, I'm teaching a group of Saudi Arabian students. Why? Because their government knows oil's going to run out. And so entrepreneurship has actually become a hot topic in Saudi Arabia. And so I just see continued expansion. And quite frankly, I think it should be mandatory for education.
Steve, are you one of the people who believes that leadership is more important than the technology, that you would pick the team, or that you would bet on a team rather than technology? Can you talk about that? Because I think based on some of the things you've said, that may not be true for you.
I'll quote a friend of mine who's a VC, and it's, to me, I have to look at the entire picture to decide. But typically in entrepreneurship, the big question is, what's most important? Is it people? Is it your product? Or is it the market? And for a long time, it was about the product, and then Lean Sigma came along, and now everybody says it's the people. You're better off with good people and a crappy product. On the other hand, my friend, who is a very successful VC, said, that is so overrated. He said, it's about the product. And the reason why is, when he looks at a product, if he sees the value in it, he said, if this truly has value, the market will be there for it. And then he pointed out that most CEOs don't make it to the end. He said, oh, if you can't execute this, I'll just whack you and find someone else to replace you. I don't have a bias either way. To me, it's looking at the entire picture and seeing where the weaknesses are, and that tends to create my bias.
Fantastic.
That's great.
Steve, thank you for joining.
Oh, sorry, Cheryl.
No, I just was thanking Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just about out of time here, but I just want to thank Dr. Steve Cho for joining us today and sharing all of your thoughts with us. Thank you to Cheryl for being here and leading the conversation as well. And thank you to everybody that joined us to attend the webinar today. As I mentioned, we are still accepting applications for MSIVD this fall 2020, so you do still have time to apply. If you have any questions about the program or the application process, feel free to contact us, and we'd be more than happy to answer your questions and have more conversations with you about the program as well. I hope that everybody has a really great day, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.